Today, I'm going to talk about how you can personalize your customer onboarding experience to reduce churn. The reason I want to talk about this is because I see so many SaaS companies miss the mark here. And although they may show customers how to start using the product, they don't take the opportunity to keep customers excited and show them how to see value with the product, which means onboarding isn't successful. And as a result, these customers that marketing and sales work so hard to acquire ends up churning. You might be familiar with David Scott from Matrix Partners, but if you're not, check out his blog, forentrepreneurs.com. He has said that in his work with SaaS companies, there are two reasons for customer churn that occur more frequently than any other. The first is failure to successfully onboard the customer. If you fail to get it right at onboarding, customers will write off the product as not being good enough as they had hoped. And once they get in that mindset, it's much harder to get them back to a positive enough view to spend more time to try it again later. So think about it. You've all probably experienced friction when using a new product or service for the first time. You know, it could be that complex login process, an interface that's not intuitive, or there's no one there to help answer your questions about the product. Does that make you want to come back and keep using the product? I'll bet that's a no. I know I've been there before. So this makes onboarding that make it or break it time for new users. So with that, there's one tactic that many companies overlook that can make a huge difference in reducing friction, and that's personalizing the customer experience. And with that, the onboarding experience. And when I say personalization, I'm not just talking about using a first name in the email. Personalization means customizing the onboarding process to something that fits the unique needs, goals, and expectations of each user. So there are really three ways to personalize the onboarding experience to reduce churn, and those are segmenting your users, engaging users inside and outside of your product, and providing targeted content. All right, let's start with segmentation. Segmentation is really the backbone for personalization of onboarding. When you segment your users into cohorts, you'll have an easier time digesting user data and developing engagement strategies. Not every user is the same, and they're all going to have different goals. So it's important that you don't treat all users the same, because when you do, it's really a recipe for failure. For example, at User IQ, we segment users based on the types of milestones we expect them to achieve as they become more active in our product. By gathering information from the user, so not just the buyer or the customer account as a whole, about how they're going to be using the product and what they want to achieve and what success is going to look like for them, you can then tailor onboarding to those factors and put users on the right path from the start. But you really want to start with some of these when you're starting the user segmentation process, start by mapping your onboarding process and answer some segmentation questions first. Determine how many different paths are needed for onboarding. Determine if you're going to allow users to diverge from their defined paths. And if so, how are you going to ensure that they're guided back to re-enter their path? And finally, determine how you're going to personalize this for each cohort. For example, can you personalize it by use case, by their name, by their job title, or by your role? And it may seem obvious, but the more personalized you can get with each of these answers, the better their user engagement and onboarding strategy will be. To illustrate this, how you can personalize onboarding with segmentation, here's a look at how we do this at User IQ for ourselves. The first step we took in defining our segments was to identify the critical features we find in our most successful customers who use our product. So we looked at that and we noticed that 2 milestones are really necessary to drive adoption of our product and those were creating a segment and launching a campaign. Next, we then use these milestones to identify users who have achieved these milestones as segments. As they progress and hit new milestones, they enter new segments. And this really helps us create engagements in our application that are milestone-based, so we can smoothly guide them from one milestone to the next. And 2 important things to remember here are adoption and milestone achievements are not always going to be linear. So you need to account for users who may drop off so you can guide them back on that path to success. In the onboarding and adoption stages, we measure progression between milestone and drop-off groups by considering variables like sign-up date and feature usage over a specific period. To make it to the next stage, for example, users must have logged in less than 30 days ago and also access the Create segment like you're seeing in Milestone 1 or Launch Campaign like you see in Milestone 2 features at least one time. The advantage of this milestone-based segmentation approach is that you can easily keep track of journey progress and combine milestone data to build overarching stages. For example, here you'll see that once we are able to tell which users have achieved onboarding success since they belong to both Milestone 1 and Milestone 2 segments, we can then create specific segments for users who have hit both of those milestones and are now considered successfully onboarded. Additionally, breaking down the customer journey into specific milestone segments enables us to tailor our onboarding engagement efforts for bringing users back on that path to success. You can then implement different touch points based on where they dropped off and assess impact on conversion at each step. And that'll help you answer questions that your VP or CEO may want to know, like, is our ratio of successful customers increasing over time? Is our drop-off rate improving between milestones? And how are these segments improving overall? Now that you've mastered segmentation and segmented your users, it's important to engage them inside and outside of your product during onboarding and map these to those important milestones that you created earlier. Mapping these milestones will help you really personalize that customer experience, improve engagement, and keep your users motivated. This also provides instant opportunities to connect with customers and create that overall stickier experience to make sure retention is happening. All right, let's start here with some in-app touch points. This could be anything from a progress bar within a tutorial to tips and shortcuts that help users make the most efficient use of their onboarding time. So in low-touch onboarding models, in-app guidance is really critical to user understanding and adoption of core features and functions. Whereas if you have a high-touch onboarding model, in-app guidance can reinforce and supplement those high-touch efforts that you're doing. After a welcome message, try step-by-step guides like Upwork does in this example to help lead your customers quickly to value. A well-mapped and personalized experience can ensure that users are exposed to the features and functions that drive those business results for their particular need or role. You can also remove frustration or future support needs by drawing attention to areas that users often find confusing or troublesome, which will really help improve user adoption. Another great in-app message that you can display is a blank state. Until users are up and running on your product, they may encounter core functions that are not yet populated. Why not use the opportunity to provide them with user-friendly instructions on how to activate or what other actions to complete in the meantime? Running into empty screens with no value frustrates users and should definitely be avoided. The final in-app touchpoint involves celebrating major milestones. Keep users engaged and motivated by recognizing key accomplishments throughout the onboarding process. Next, we also want to think about ways to engage your users outside of your application. A great way to start is by making a personal connection with new users by sending them a welcome email. This communication can set the tone for your relationship. It makes them feel important. It can let them know you're glad they are considering or have selected you. It also establishes you as a resource for questions or support. Really take this time to share some simple actions they can take to keep them engaged with a list of resources to explore, next steps in the process, or explain how to get started. Another way to help personalize onboarding is with drip campaigns, just like in marketing. By profiling users and monitoring what kinds of content they interact with within your product or application, you can serve up targeted emails that encourage activation, create opportunities for customer expansion, and build customer loyalty. Finally, if you have a particularly lengthy or complex customer onboarding process, you may consider sending users a token when they complete the process. We love this package we received from Gemini. No matter if it's a simple card or branded company swag like t-shirts, custom food from your city, state, stickers, etc., but any recognition of that job well done will create a sense of goodwill and connection between you and your customers. The final tip I want to share today is to provide targeted content to your users during the onboarding phase to reduce churn. I'm a marketer, so I want to relate this to the buyer's journey. Just as you want to break up content by that top, middle, and bottom of the funnel, and by persona, you need to provide the right content to users in each stage of onboarding, and it needs to be most relevant to them based on where they are in the onboarding process and what they're trying to accomplish. Here are some best practices to think about when developing your content strategy for onboarding and how to deliver it. First, features and benefits represent the backbone of how your SaaS application is going to enable customers to achieve their business objectives. That's why they need to be prominently shown throughout content pieces so that users know and are continuously reminded of what they can expect from your product once they complete the onboarding. In addition, try providing different categories of written and visual content, since some users could be more receptive to videos and in-app engagement points, whereas others may prefer emails or how-to guides. You could have an animated video play for the first time a user logs into your product to run them through how the product works. This can really help simplify the onboarding process. Finally, while you want to ensure users have all they need to onboard adequately, a lot of the functionality you offer will be new to them, and you need to resist the temptation to provide too much information at once. If a user hasn't gone through phase 1 of onboarding, don't send them emails related to phase 2 or phase 3. As a tip, if you have an automated drip nurture program, make sure there is time to fire off when a user has completed a certain milestone, instead of after week 1, week 2, etc. During the onboarding process, users may want to access to talk to a live person if they have questions or issues that can't be solved through their already available resources. You'll need to determine what kind of contact you'll support. Is it phone calls, chat, text, video, email, how you'll staff onboarding, what turnaround time you'll commit to, and what type of escalation plan you'll need. But make sure you have a plan and you communicate that to your customers ahead of time to avoid frustration or mismanage expectations on both ends. So, to recap what we discussed in this presentation, it is possible to avoid being blindsided by one of the 2 biggest reasons for churn that SaaS companies are facing today, which is failure to successfully onboard your customers. You can do this by personalizing the customer onboarding experience. When done well, this 3-step process of segmenting your users, engaging users inside and outside of your application, and providing targeted content leads to reduced churn, stronger retention, and above all, successful customers that are shouting your praises. And what more can you ask for? Thanks again for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day.